seguimos entonces, ya vimos el rol del GFC y en países...
We are going to resume. We were hearing from Eric Stefan about the advantages of using the cloud for cybersecurity and cost saving. And now we're going to continue with these topics. Now we are going to talk about cybersecurity and how to protect critical infrastructures. Eric was mentioning the use of the cloud. And now we have a very interesting panel that is going to be moderated by somebody that is Juan Carrillo, Director of Cybersecurity, Privacy and Forensic Services at PwC. He's in Mexico. Hello, Juan Carlos, how are you? It's a pleasure to meet you. We have friends in common that have contacted us. Thank you for your time, for organizing this panel, and I'm sorry for the delay, but we are in a TV studio and we have like different signals and different times, and this is like a new experience for all of us. So I'm really sorry also to the panelists for the delay. And now I give you the floor so that you can start with this panel. It's a great pleasure to share this panel and to be part of this school. The idea of this panel is to talk about critical infrastructure. It's a very interesting panel. Before introducing them, I would like to show a couple of slides to talk about what we are going to be addressing in this panel, and then I'm going to introduce all the members of the panel. A topic that I think that is very important is what is the role of anybody working in cybersecurity.
So we have a change in the development and the way we keep security, the way we manage it, how we collaborate, provide consulting. This may seem that these are topics of different fields, but everybody that is in cybersecurity precisely knows these topics very well. And at the end of the day, there are many issues because if you have this know-how, in many occasions, this is complex. And this is one of the things that is affecting us. So what are we learning and what has changed over the last 10 years? I'm sure that this is going to be addressed by Cecilia, Abel, and Diego. This has changed dramatically in the way top management sees security, cybersecurity. We have increasingly more regulations and scrutiny. The fines and the costs of information has increased. I'm sure that we're going to have a cybersecurity incident and how I'm going to be resilient. Logically, the risk mitigation, and then security requires increasingly more an operational challenge. For everybody that is in cybersecurity, will require not only expertise, but also experience out of the last 20 years. And it's when we see an exponential growth in cybersecurity. There's lack of experience in other topics, and then we have regulatory metrics, legal issues, and there's a lot of challenges in the way we relate it to other business areas, communications, managing people. We talk about managing technical credibility, leadership, and talent management, and planning. And eventually, new skills. And this is especially for everybody that wants to become involved in cybersecurity, the students that are attending these schools. This is also crucial, and we need to see how strategy goes around, not only in terms of cybersecurity, speaking skills, the wit to understand the legal and the regulatory framework. The end is not technology, but business eventually. So here you have a list, and I'm sure that we're going to be presenting this to all of you through our PowerPoint. Our intention is to kickstart to introduce our panel today that is very important. Olga, can you tell me if you can introduce the panel or if you want me to introduce them? Okay, let me tell you what the agenda is going to be like in the next hour. I'm going to introduce the five panelists, and once I introduce them, every one single of them is going to introduce the critical aspect of cybersecurity. I'm going to introduce Joe, Diego, and Abel, and later a Q&A where I'm going to ask some questions, and everybody will have some space for asking questions. Cecilia, would you like to discuss some of these issues? Yes, Juan Carlos. Slides, please. First and foremost, I would like to thank for having invited me. Thank you for having me to this panel. This is the first time that I participate in the School of Governance of the Internet. I know the topics that they were addressing, but I've never took part, so it's an honor for me. On the other hand, I would like to tell you that I am very thankful, and especially for having listened to these previous conferences and keynote speakers. It's a lot of update information on concrete and real data. I have a double major. I work for the university as a teacher in the School of Economics and an adjunct teacher, professor, that is in IT in organizations. So what we do here is introduce students to technology that later are going to expand their knowledge through different majors. So we don't see technology by itself, but associated to the business, as Juan Pablo was saying, where we identify what are the requirements or these companies required, answering to what the IT professional can do. So we train a professional with updated knowledge, not only providing the necessary tools for today in terms of cybersecurity and thinking of the future as well. This is the challenge that lies ahead of us, because what are organizations going to be like? How do we need to train our professionals to be active in the next 4 or 5 years? Our students, some of them work professionally, have a job, or they do their jobs while they are being trained. The objective is that they become CIOs or CEOs or managers in IT. Also, I am the under secretary of academic IT systems at the University of Buenos Aires, and it helps me to be in contact with teachers or professors to train these students more effectively, both by department and with the academic department. We update the syllabus, the curricula. We include innovation initiatives, new IT initiatives with these guidelines and objectives. No technology only, but applied to our environment and regulations to the companies here in Argentina. and it serves to work abroad also. What are the challenges that lies ahead of us? Well, the wealth of resources demanded by the market because there's a high demand for IT people, and there's a gap between what is being demanded and the professionals that we produce. And this is here where we need to work jointly. The pandemic created more connections, cybersecurity incidents, so that requires cybersecurity professionals, not only IT people. And this is the way we can assess critical infrastructure and what it brings to the table for the society and for organizations to operate. And then I became a platinum cybersecurity director. I'm a partner of Platinum. That is a consultant firm. We focus on cybersecurity and we identify and help companies to have a roadmap where they include cybersecurity in their organizations. There are some that are required to have an IT cybersecurity department. They have the CIO, they have they're responsible for the compliance of regulations. However, the objective is to identify these critical assets, what they have in order to monetize and to analyze and to assess the risk of these assets and to relate them to others. Business continuity plan, business continuity or contingency plans, and disaster recovery. As professionals, as professors at the University of Buenos Aires, and in organizations, and I identify in many industries what the needs are, and to trace some parallelism and combine the two worlds. Thank you, Juan Carlos. Clear the management of this is what encompasses this task that is going to be borne by the cyber IT people. Thank you, Cecilia. And in this conference, we have Joe Abley. Joe, I'm going to share your presentation, and Joe is going to be addressing this issue of cybersecurity. I'm going to second Joe. We're going to be sharing your presentation. Joe, can you hear me with English translation?
Muchas gracias a Joe. La verdad es que es una visión bien interesante de pronto de qué es crítico.
Thank you very much for this critical vision. Defining this could be managed by the user, final user, rather than by critics. For example, in a company, they consider critical infrastructure as email, not the ERP or CRM. The most critical application was email for the general director to answer via his BlackBerry. That was the critical aspect. Diego, your turn. Let me share your slides so you can start with your talk. Hang on a second.
Adelante, Diego.
¿Cómo les va? Muy buen día, muy buen día.
Morning. Let me introduce myself.
Primero que quiero agradecer,
My name is
agradecer la invitación a participar y compartir.
My name is Diego Esteve, and I would like to share my presentation and to share my experience. For those of us that work in cybersecurity, we need to share our experience even more because in organized cybercrime does share. So I would like to take this opportunity to share my experience and the way we do it.
Para mí es fundamental. Cuando me
For me, it is fundamental.
inicialmente cuenten ahí, agradecer a la Universidad de Palermo que
I would like to thank
participar,
the
así que
the University of Palermo for letting me participate here.
ahí pueden ver
Let me tell you
unas líneas.
my bio.
Años que trabajo en temas de seguridad de la información.
I have worked for the last 20 years in cybersecurity, cyber information.
Desde hace ya algún tiempo.
So I've been learning for a long time. I work in the banking industry and over the last years in the energy industry. I specialize in cybersecurity and in risk in electronic media or fraud. So, as most of the cybersecurity people, I had a chance to be certified, to take some international tests. I like teaching, I like giving talks. So here's my email, just in case you would like to ask me a question, and I'll be at your disposal. So let's continue with the presentation. In a snapshot, by way of a few slides, I would like to present what is critical infrastructure, how interesting could be, and how we could use it as a platform for questions in the future. First, to position cybersecurity cross-cutting these aspects. And I bring some statistics from the World Economic Forum because they prepare a global risk assessment. And when we talk about global risk, we are talking about climate change, lost jobs, major risks. In the report, we see the same trends for 2019 and 2020. The World Economic Forum classifies the risks in terms of likelihood of impact and occurrence. If you pay attention to my slide, there are three boxes. One speaks of cyber attacks. The other one is on information or data theft, and the other one is critical infrastructure. Let's see how these building blocks are positioned in terms of cybersecurity. Right now, these are the top risks, which can also be seen or witnessed in other reports, like the insurance companies that prepare these sort of reports with cybercrime, and they appear as top priorities. What do we see? What happens? After cybersecurity incidents arise, there are some regulations enforced that define how to act and that they go around or about cybersecurity. We are not going to review each and every one of them. However, I would like to give you a snapshot on the way we need to work with a framework that is going to give us order or to work with a long-term vision on how we operate and how we can make these improvements. I would like to cite 5 examples. 2 of them really caught my attention. And I like driving these initiatives at the majors at the university and at the professional level. The first one is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. This framework provides us a general vision, everything that has to do with cybersecurity. Also, I like that of the Center for Internal Security because it dwells into detail in the technologies and you can dwell in the processes that we set at the very beginning. Now, I was telling you that after we had some incidents in countries, these countries started to take action and they create command and cybersecurity centers in all countries. Here you have the Chilean case. Another one that was created for Argentina, where we have different regulation that was created. The idea was how to go about cybersecurity in these countries and how do we approach this issue, and how to conduct the implementation of a framework at the state or company level, and then to take your questions.
Excelente, muchas gracias. Vamos para terminar esta presentación, digamos.
Thank you very much. Let me conclude with with this presentation. I will give the floor to Abel. Abel, please give me a second to screen your presentation, but you can introduce yourself.
Juan Carlos, no hay ningún problema, comparto mi pantalla y perfecto. Bien, un segundito entonces. Cuestión de permisos, segundito. No, bueno, entonces, por las dudas, te pido entonces si continúes vos con la presentación, por favor, así, porque creo que hasta incluso me quiere sacar del Zoom, así que no vamos por ese lado. Bueno, aprovecho entonces para tomar estos segundos en primera instancia.
Okay, let me take this opportunity to acknowledge and thank you for the invitation. I would like to thank Juan Carlos, Oscar, Olga, Adrián, Tatiana for organizing this forum with all the panelists. And I would like to tell you, just like you, that we have to share, or we should share this experience that is the best case scenario to protect infrastructures. In the first slide, I would like to give you some background or everything that has to do with critical infrastructures. 2011, we created the National Program for Critical Infrastructure and Cybersecurity, by which the state gives us guidelines and objectives that have to do with the protection and the improvement of connectivity networks in the public sector, and to have some synergies and to work with or together with the private sector, that is the one that provides connectivity and infrastructure. So we create that ASAR, the first team to address cybersecurity incidents. And right now we have evolved to another body. In 2017, we had this cybersecurity committee The Public Innovation Secretariat is membered together with other ministries and other stakeholders, the objective of which is to have a national strategy for cybersecurity that ends up after diverse transformations and amendments, ends up being adopted in 2019, where we adopt the infrastructure critical information definition, where we have two important resolutions. They define the criteria and the scope, where we are going to place priority on the national state to protect the management of the cyber security. Here we have a total of 8 criteria in 11 sectors or industries where we work on the management and protection of cybersecurity. The managers or the responsible of cybersecurity of every single organization are active members. And this is key for policy making and for protection plans. And this is not the case for the national state, but we work together with the organizing committees of the ministries, but there's always a responsible party in these industries. I would like to place priority on the ICTs, since we are here at the Summer School of Internet Governance. And briefly, I would like to mention or to talk about a series of actions that have been taken on the part of the state to work with infrastructure. First, we launched the National Plan for Connectivity last Monday with the Undersecretary of ICTs and together with the RSAT people, defined this plan briefly, and I would like to extend the fiber optics federal network, which is precisely the interconnectivity of the many points in the country with fiber optics. That is expanding interconnectivity since fiber is being developed. And also the value of RSAT, because RSAT is a PPP, private-public partnership, which is the trunking node for this network, responsible for the operations. And it has a data center that is very significant, where a lot of IT critical centers or information have interoperability or are interlinked. So that's why we underscore the value of RSAT to provide the necessary security to these assets, particularly with a set of within the set of infrastructure. We have the National Data Center. Not to go into detail, apart from what we are saying, is that it involves everything that has to do with information, paperwork, and all the projects at the national level are filed there. The protection of file, apart from the antivirus, anti-DOS systems, web applications, network operation center, it leverages this national CERT. National CERT is being structured twofold. One is the update of the processes with the new technologies that are migrating to new infrastructures, and on the other hand, the automation of operations that will allow the daily operation of CERT to have quality of service that is improved and in turn to protect other infrastructure. Next slide. In the next slide, we are going to review the national CERT We have all the incidents centralized from the public sector in the national level in Argentina, and we provide consultancy and advice to those stakeholders responsible for cybersecurity so they can prevent it or to work in the event that the the cyber attack is executed. The target community is involved in the critical infrastructure applications, and it coordinates all the work jointly with the different CERT and CERT at the regional and provincial level, since one team cannot respond to all the incidents that arise, and you don't get to know all the cyber security incidents. So it coordinates, there is an umbrella to report all these incidents and the solutions that we may propose at the provincial level. By way of background, let me tell you that we are members of the CERT, Americas.org, and first. A month ago, we became members of CERTAmericas.org, even though many government agencies work with the OAS and sponsors for this program. This is the first time that from the National CERT, we became involved or members of this program, and we are at the same time assessing some information projects that were received from them to work in line with some procedures and to have this new national center to improve the quality of the data that we hold. And the last slide, I would like to mention briefly the three projects where we want to work along these lines, and the way or the path that we have to take, the course that we're going to set to protect this infrastructure. The ICI catalog created, this has to do with the idea of integrating and having that information, useful information available in detail in the different sectors that I mentioned in the first slides. Projections, forecasts, protection, everything that has to do with the management and the administration of this critical infrastructure will allow us to work out a plan detailed for every sector. Because out of the ICTs in water, engineering, or chemical resources, we always have specialists that they can work in cybersecurity, but especially becoming involved, especially in the sectors where they operate, instead of the daily management of these infrastructures. We believe that this catalog is going to drive an ongoing improvement method through the know-how and the policies that we have in place for improving this. We are designing an IOC federal network, commitment indicators that we may receive from the malware. So the objective is that together with the different CERT and coordination with them, we could have a more dynamic network and having processes and to take measures to prevent these incidents. I was listening to the rest of the presentations, and I heard that one of the major concerns are early alerts. Having an early alert of something that is happening in another region, an agency, and being aware of what this may happen that is attacking another country is going to provide us with a benefit in terms of infrastructure management to foresee this or to protect ourselves further if we ever found ourselves under attack. And then CERT with AI especially to work on prevention and the protection of all the cyber attacks that could be present in this infrastructure, to leverage the techniques of machine learning with learning the systems that manage this infrastructure and to understand the normal operation in real time, or as soon as possible, whenever there's a deviation out of this behavior that may report some possible cyber attack in the near future. And then, based on the restructure now said, that we could create higher automation in processes and protocols when managing incidents and managing the infrastructure whenever we provide that quality of service to help with knowledge to the different infrastructure centers and to provide this information that could be more scalable or normalized to provide a better quality of service for the operations of Artel ARSAT. This is the way we were working. This is the objective for the future. And thank you very much for giving me the chance to speak.
Excellent presentation, Abel. Thank you so much. Now we have a Q&A session. We're going to do it in Spanish and in English so that Joe can also participate.
Empezando, digamos, sin un orden en específico, pero igual iré dándole primero la voz, en este caso, a Cecilia. Pero
first, I'm going to give the floor to Cecilia. Cecilia, which would be the main challenges that countries, companies, industries, people face as regards cybersecurity? Joe was talking about how critical this is, and that is going to depend on the end user. So which do you think is the main challenge nowadays? As regards critical infrastructures, what is affecting us is everything that has to do with access to internet, to communication. So whatever the area we're thinking about, we are going to be affected. And it is important that at the government level, there's an analysis and that we can identify the situation nowadays and how the government can help offering services to what companies and people need. And at the company level, they are affected in the sense that maybe we can think about cybersecurity, Internet of Things, phishing. We need to bring awareness as regards these topics, not only the framework by which companies should be regulated, but also how employees and people working in companies understand security. They know what they can do, which are the possible threats that they may face. At the family level, individual level, as Joe was saying, all the access that we need, the analysis of the apps we use, different chats in those apps, if we know that our kids are chatting with people we don't know, if there's grooming or any kind of the things, we think that it's also important to handle those things.
Joe. Y Diego, yo creo que tú lo estás viviendo, ¿no? Al final del día, en tu rol de CISO, al final del día es...
Diego, you can tell us about your role nowadays. I'm sure that you maybe ask about the security every time. Tell us a little bit about it. You're muted. Thank you. I think that as regards protection of critical infrastructure, there are like two elements that we need to think about. One is protecting infrastructure itself. Nowadays, I have the role of protecting infrastructure within a financial sector. A while ago, I was working in the energy sector. But nowadays, the idea is how we as a company can protect ourselves and can protect our infrastructure from possible attacks. I think that is paramount. And I also want to mention something that I think is very important, that is protecting personal information. Nowadays, there are many attacks, many groups that are focusing on personal information. I'm not only talking about financial information, I'm talking about personal information itself. For example, health information, like information that you may post in your social networks. When we think beyond that, and we think that the person that is going to process that information is not a person and they are using AI to process that information, I think that we need to think that personal information should be taken care of. We should focus on that as regards security at the country and at the global level. There's a lot to be done in that area. Abel, I think that you were saying something about the idea that the government has a role, because Joe was talking about the fact that there is no border or no division in internet. It's like how vulnerability in a country can affect another country, which is the limit, or how can we think about what is critical and which are the perspectives. Without a doubt, in the current situation that we are facing with the pandemic, those limits or borders that you were talking about and Joe was talking about are lost. It's very difficult nowadays to see, as Diego was saying, is if our router at home is secure to protect my personal data, or maybe a basic concept like, for example, when we are doing this kind of video conferences, the regular user may have a picture in the background or maybe some kind of visual information, and cyber criminals can work with those things. And nowadays, by having this critical infrastructure also at home, because we are working through maybe a network with the security password that our internet provider gave us, or we don't have the necessary knowledge to have that information secured, we need to think how safe our internet provider is so that our information is not under threat, which are the policies that the state is going to offer us as regards information security. And I think that we need to think about that, because we are all affected, as our colleagues were saying. And at the end of the day, I think that the important thing, and in my role as a public officer, is that we need to define what is critical infrastructure for each niche and think about different policies that we may suggest. we have the personal data protection law and different laws and regulations that are going to help us. There are different policies as regards information security, but if from home I connect to a working network, I don't have a VPN, for example, or I don't have the necessary security, probably that vulnerability is going to affect the rest of the levels. So I think that everything is interconnected and we need to focus on that from the bottom up, from the bottom to, and that would be my vision of how we need to focus on the different aspects of cybersecurity and data protection. Cecilia, in your role at the university, I think that you can see this. A few months ago, there was a research as regards different universities in the US, the best 25 universities in the US, and only one of those had a subject on cybersecurity. So it is something that you are seeing at your university as well. Yes. What I see is the need of students to learn about cybersecurity, about how they are or how they can help companies they are working in to be secured. We have two IT law subjects in our curricula, including, of course, cybersecurity. And when I teach, all the topics are related to cybersecurity, hardware, software, systems, everything can be associated or related to cybersecurity. So we do have a direct involvement. We don't have a specific subject as regards cybersecurity, but we talk about it in all the different subjects in the curricula. I have an expert in those topics that help us understand, help students understand from a different point of view these topics. And once we finish the lesson, they start thinking about all these cybersecurity issues that they didn't know before. And I think that is very efficient in that sense.
para complementar, y estoy acá en casa con la mayoría de nosotros, y normalmente...
Add a few words. I am here in my daughter's room, and here I have a box, and that is very cheap. This costs less than $100. It's a pineapple Wi-Fi. It's only $100, and it takes 4 antennas, and it replicates Wi-Fi signal. It's not that it's easy, but it's simple. And you don't need a PhD to address this. Joe, have you seen the case of Twitter? That was a 17-year-old in Florida that attacked and hacked Minecraft and then said, how do I go about and hack Twitter? You know, this is a complex issue because sometimes we cannot understand or perceive the dimension and the impact of what attackers can do. Diego, how did you see awareness in corporations? How complex it is to report this to the CIO or the financial director or any CFO that you cannot use the same password for Gmail, for your Gmail account, or for your or to insert the USB keychains in no other ports. Do you raise awareness or it becomes more simple? How do you guys go about this? We cannot hear you. I believe that people are becoming aware of this. For those of us that work in cybersecurity, it's very good. Streamlines or simplifies the process sometimes. In the past, probably they question why changing passwords or why they had to include an alphanumeric character. But this is the new standard for now. The new standard that came with the pandemic. Again, we work with VPN, virtual private networks, and we ask for a token, right? Without, if we didn't have the pandemic, many people would have complained to type a token ID. Right now, everybody uses a token to connect to the VPN, and they do it on a daily basis. So people change. And if you have an orderly way of working and you explain why and what for, people are not resilient. Over the last years, in terms of finance, the prevailing regulation primarily focused on raising awareness. And why was that? Because we may do a lot of work to make our systems more secure. However, this security chain is broken sometimes at the weakest link. And the weakest link in all these tiers of society or security are people. Mistakes, errors, hacks. This is due to sometimes weak passwords, weak configurations. So raising awareness is a must first. In all corporate levels. And you may segment and you may work by explaining in every single level some of these peculiarities. The pandemic brought this to the table and simplified this at the society level. We are seeing this, and this is demonstrated or being raised in the companies, and raising awareness is pretty good. It's in a way helping us with enhancing cybersecurity. In Mexico, we said that there's no patch or patch or fix for human stupidity. That would be layer 8, tier 8. Okay. Abel, what can we say about this? How as Joe was saying, this is not a project. Yes, we can raise awareness or training just for October, just for a month. Like October, the month of cyber awareness, or does it imply an ongoing training program or continuous awareness raising? We believe that training needs to be the pillar or the building block for all aspects, from the local user in homes and all those users that are highly trained data protector systems. I believe this is ongoing. You cannot lag behind with the knowledge that we had from the past. Organized crime, as you explained, and being adept to new technologies that improve the tools that cyber attackers have, cyber hackers. If you learn what you learn from the past, basically it's too late. So training, getting to know new things, and being updated or being at the front of cybersecurity is something crucial. Everything that has to do with certifications helps with this. Not by merely having a diploma or a certificate, it means that you know, but at least it's an update or some training. So having those skills and evaluating these aspects and to be certified along these guidelines, as it was mentioned here, like ISO, NICE standards, protocols that help with the ongoing protection. I believe this is crucial for us. And I see this as a great challenge ahead of us, because what is the actual cost of investing in capital or in protection, or after the cyber attack occurred, once I have the problem or the issue in my organization? So, considering the post pandemic structure or framework that we're all suffering, and we know that our organizations are highly affected by this, I believe that one of the challenges that we had ahead of us is what we are going to create, that capability or that investment in the necessary resources in training or anticipating to these issues. I advocate training, especially because it's a way of prevention. So I believe that there should be an ongoing effort in training, especially for those that are responsible for our own information, in learning and training along these lines. And there's a whole new concept of security and by design, okay? Not to invest not and to anticipate the issues, okay? It can be done, but the cost is going to be greater. We're going to have questions from the audience as well. Audience, right? Olga, I'm sure there are questions in the audience. Without further ado, over to you. Let me tell you that we have 500 participants in our room with acknowledgements, congratulations for the panelists, excellent presentations by moderation by Juan Carlos, and excellent presentations by the four panels. I'm sure that you can hear Joe's presentation because he mentions what is critical and what is not. I believe that for Spanish speaking people it's easier to follow probably the Spanish speaking speakers. But there are many questions here that are for all the panels, especially there's one about the incident. What happened with immigrations? If they were able to solve it, if they knew that For Diego, a Chilean bank, they hijacked the infrastructure and they disabled all the agencies and they prevented people from doing banking transactions. What is the critical issue? That's for Diego. For all the panelists, how do you approach technological infrastructure in the public sector? How do you link it with the cloud? If it's a solution, is it good to have a hybrid cloud, for example? What incidents did you suffer in Argentina in critical infrastructure for Abel? How would you rate that attack or that hacking that occurred in immigrations? And what is your advice for teenagers that are so active in social media? And also the project of digital children, because the existing generations are lagging behind in data protection and cybersecurity. So we have to train them since the early stages. I believe that this summarize and they are more or less in the same wavelength. Abel, can you take the issue of immigrations?
It was a topic that raised a lot of public interest. The immigration office here was attacked by hackers, and they asked for it was a ransomware. It wasn't a proactive attack. We communicated with the people in charge of the infrastructure, and they told us that in the first few hours, critical infrastructure or databases were not hacked by this ransomware, but they could see that there was like a second attack. It was not a single attack, but two, and there was information theft, and after that, they executed the ransomware that encrypted different systems that are of public knowledge, and we communicated with them. We offered our help, and there was some quick legal answer. We didn't participate there, and I think that the information office here also participated. There's a lot of confidential information there, but what we did was give them different recommendations and technical help. I think that in the afternoon, Mr. Asolin is going to be in one of the panels. He's the person in charge of the cybercrime fiscal unit, so he may be able to answer the questions better than me. From the legal point of view, there were different concerns and alerts after this incident. We started having more consultation, and we started working more on that. We started working on how to prevent this kind of incidents. We checked all the information that we had, and once we got that information, we started working so that everybody can have different infrastructure changes. And we also launched a campaign for the public sector as regards to different tips and actions that they could take to protect themselves from this kind of attacks. That's what we did at CERT. And luckily, there was not much information was taken, and it wasn't critical infrastructure that they got access to. So we have only 3 or 4 minutes. So Diego, this question about the financial sector, because I think that the financial sector is the sector that is critical. Where there is money is where they go. So the question that they were asking about the bank in Chile, what can you tell us? The financial sector was always focus of attacks in different countries. Since 2018, financial institutions in Latin America are being under attack and are being targeted by criminals. These are groups that are specifically targeting these institutions. Why? Because all companies in Latin America need to do something. Why? Because this happened before in the US and in Europe, and we need to improve as regards security companies. What happened to this bank in Chile was a typical ransomware attack where they compromised first their network, and then they started getting into the network, and then they launched the ransomware, and they encrypted a lot of servers and computers, and the bank couldn't operate. What can we do there? What should we take into account? First of all, we need to have more visibility. We need to see what happens inside our network. The cybersecurity within companies need to have a role in which they can see everything. It is important to understand what is going on inside the networks, to have a cybersecurity monitoring center. And the second idea as regards visibility is to answer quickly. Maybe if the bank could see and answer quickly, they may not be affected so much from the operational point of view, because they may have been able to contain it. So it is important for companies to have visibility, to have a monitoring center, and to train people regarding these kind of attacks. These are the 2 main or most important things we need to work on. We are going to be under attack, but we need to detect those attacks and answer quickly.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Joe. Excellent point. Cecilia, para finalizar, me parece que Joe nos deja
Cecilia, Joe mentioned exactly the cybersecurity is that we have to expect the unexpected. What do you see for the near future? We understand that everybody is exposed and everybody's going to be under attack sooner or later. So we need to see how ready we are for that moment. We are going to be under attack because otherwise, not because we are the target, but probably we are the link for a company or a link for an industry by through which they're going to gather information. So we need to raise awareness, organize training, surveil, monitor the tools that we're using. If it's behaving differently, probably the device is spending more battery, or if it turns off, and if I see a weird app, or if the app is behaving differently as well. So countries, companies, and individuals should understand this and be ready for this. It's a challenge that we need to overcome, but the thing is, how do we tackle this challenge? How do we have the necessary tools and know-how and knowledge or devices in order to overcome this final issue? Without further ado, we would like to thank all the panelists for being here, because we could organize a seminar with this level of panelists. Thank you very much for your presentation, Joe. Cecilia, Diego, Abel, thank you very much. Without further ado, Olga, we can conclude with this panel. Thank you very much. It's been great. I would like to draw some conclusions because they say the journey is destination. It's something that we have to build on. I love the way you moderated, you asked interesting questions. Joe, I loved it.
Use it for my teaching. María Cecilia, colega de la UBA, un encanto tenerte.
María Cecilia, it's a pleasure having you here. Diego, I love your presentation. Thank you very much for the University of Palermo for being here. And Abel, you had to reply many questions. Colleagues from Mexico, congratulate you for your work in CERT, and I am glad that you're in the CERT because you take care of us. Greetings to all of you. Stay healthy. And I thank you for your participation. Thank you very much. Greetings from the team in Argentina. Thank you. We will resume at 2:30.